Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Utah identifies itself as a rural state. That's been our history. Think about us. We are the pioneer state. We celebrate Days of 47. It is all about the rural farming agricultural culture that we base our identity around. So we are going to spend an entire half hour today talking about it in its political form. Our guests today for the program are from the Utah Farm Bureau Federation, and we have the Vice President of Public Policy, Sterling Brown, and the CEO and former guest several times on our show, Randy Parker. Guys, thanks for joining me. Now, this is a really good time to talk about Farm Bureau because I believe it's your centennial here in the state of Utah coming up next year. Is that not correct?
It is. We were organized in the state of Utah in 1916, which we will kick off a year-long event at our state convention that begins in Layton on the 18th of November and concludes on the 19th, and we're excited. We've been on the Utah landscape now for 100 years, and like our commercial says, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. We plan on being the representative of rural Utah, farmers and ranchers, and the people that we represent through our policy process for a long time to come.
So how big of an impact? I mean, if you had to say the Farm Bureau does one, they do several things. You can get insurance, they have discount programs, they have educational programs. What is the single largest thing that Farm Bureau contributes to the farming community of Utah in your estimation?
We are the advocate for agriculture. We're the advocate at the county level, we're the advocate at the state level, and we're the advocate at the national level. In Utah, a federation, Chad, is grassroots up. Our individual members bring policy to their county business meetings. It moves to the state, and then we move it to the national, the American Farm Bureau for policy consideration, representing 6 million members throughout the country. So we're a policy organization, and that's where Sterling plays a major role.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting if you stop to analyze it. 10% of Utah's population lives rurally, but agriculture is one of the top 4 industries in the state as far as gross product. Is that not correct?
It is. Farm gate sales from an agriculture standpoint are $1.8 billion. That's significant, but the ripple effect is $17 billion. That's 14% of the state's GDP. It employs 80,000 Utahns. So it's not only the history and the culture, it's the economics of the state of Utah. Friends and neighbors are employed by this industry. Plus we enjoy the fresh fruits and vegetables that we get as well.
Self-reliance, that's
Absolutely.
A good point. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with the county seat. When we return, we'll talk about the state level and the issues that are happening at state government with the Farm Bureau. We'll be right back.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
That makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
Well, you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Along Interstate 70 and Highway 89 is an area that is rich with high mountain peaks, vast forests, lakes, streams, historical sites, and a climate that is perfect for outdoor adventures, no matter what the season. Whether you visit Sevier County to catch one of the many celebrations, experience a country-style county fair, or be part of various concerts, sports, or equestrian events. You will be greeted by local residents with a smile and a welcoming hand. In the center of it all, Sevier County.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking with members of the Farm Bureau today, and their centennial is about to commence, an entire year of celebration. Sterling, I want to ask you a question. As the guy that's the policy guy for Farm Bureau, throughout your 100-year history, if you had to pick one thing that was the most significant thing you've done for agriculture in Utah as a federation, what is it?
There's been hundreds of things, but certainly the issue that comes to mind first and foremost is in 1969, Utah legislature under a compromise environment passed the Farmland Assessment Act, or commonly called the Greenbelt Law, which allows farmers and ranchers to be assessed on their property at a different value than other properties. And that single act has done more for farmers and ranchers in rural Utah and the sustainability of those families, the agriculture industry, than arguably all other laws combined. That property assessment has sustained today's family farms, not only currently but past generations and certainly going forward.
Previously, land could be assessed at its highest and best use. So if you're in a county like Salt Lake or Utah County that's quickly developing, those lands are in municipal, industrial, and so forth, and that land was being taxed at that potential conversion rate. This says that they will tax it at what it can be in producing food and fiber. That's very valuable.
So basically you could have lost the farm to taxes, and this allows you to reduce that footprint so that President Reagan said that any Las Vegas gambler would pale in comparison to the American farmers. So well, let's talk about some of the other state issues. We got a legislative session coming up. I think it's going to be a busy year. Sterling, what are some of the things that Farm Bureau is concerned with?
Yeah, there's several of them. Water certainly probably tops the list right now. Every year, Utah legislature sponsors a number of water bills. In recent years, 6, 7, 8 dozen water bills come before the legislature, and this 2016 session is shaping up to be something similar to that. Change application bills, water development bills, the process in which we adjudicate across the state. For just over 100 years, the Utah legislature has established laws to help the state Division of Water Rates adjudicate where the water is and what water is being put to beneficial use. And that's important not only to agriculture in rural Utah, but to urban folks. And that process is archaic. It needs to be updated, enhanced, and properly funded so that we can capture the low-hanging fruit out there, so to speak, in ensuring that water developments are.
There are a lot of people that are looking at water as a finite resource, which it is in a way, in a fashion, saying, okay, we've just got to not develop water, we just have to ration or distribute it. Do you see development of new water resources as part of Utah's necessary future?
Absolutely. There's 4 categories, Chad, the way I would see it, as we look to grow our state by 3 million people in the next 45 years. We need to conserve our water, both in urban Utah as well as out in rural Utah. We need to develop our remaining water. The Colorado River, the Bear River are 2 rivers that have remaining water to develop. We need to use our agricultural water. In a willing buyer, willing seller scenario, there's water to develop there.
I think it's important when Sterling brings that up to recognize of the developed water in the state of Utah, 81% of the developed water is held by farmers and ranchers, agriculture, And that's kind of been the water bank for growth in Utah.
Yeah, and the fourth category is the water that comes to the state that is used by the environment. There's over 6 million acre-feet of water that comes naturally to Utah. And the vast majority of that, in fact 87% of that water, the environment uses. Can we better manage our forests, our BLM, our other properties, so that we can capture some of that water to recharge our aquifers, route the water to our streams, our lakes, our reservoirs to meet our needs?
Well, I'll tell you what, that would spawn a debate in a quick hurry.
Sure would. Yeah, and there's early discussions to have that debate.
Well, we've covered the most important thing to the state, and we are now going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to federal problems, speaking of water, amongst other things. You're watching The County Seat. We'll see you right after this commercial break.
What's the story of your life? What chapter are you on? Did you happen to get married recently? Perhaps you found your lost puppy at the animal shelter. Or you're taking an art class at the senior center. There's that flu shot that kept you well last season. And don't forget the museums and historical sites your family loves, and all the fun you have at the County Swim Center. County services from search and rescue to maintaining roads bring tremendous value to each of our lives. We're the Utah Association of Counties, helping you build the story of your life.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah. Mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
The Utah Farm Bureau has always been there to fight for the needs of its members. With discount programs on items ranging from vehicles and ATVs to health and wellness. The membership fees aren't big, but the results are. We've been around since 1916, and we're not leaving anytime soon. Utah Farm Bureau. We work for those who work to feed the world.
The Bear Lake Valley is a beautiful, rural, historical, and recreational paradise. The changing of the season makes now a great time to come our way to see the warm colors of fall in contrast with the cool blues of Bear Lake. Visit us in the Bear Lake Valley. Come for the ride, stay for the adventure.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Welcome back to the County Seat. We are talking today about Farm Bureau, their 100th year celebration about ready to begin. And we've kind of covered some of the state issues that have been high of mind with the Farm Bureau. Now let's turn our attention to national issues. I was actually talking to somebody the other day about waters of the U.S., and they said the person who is the official wonk of water in the state is Randy Parker. So this is kind of troubling to farmers, isn't it? There's several areas of water. Let's talk about some of them.
Well, and just briefly on waters of the United States, our view is the EPA has way overreached what their congressional authority and what the Supreme Court has defined as their authority to regulate under the Clean Water Act. We're tremendously concerned that this is going to impact people's water rights, but maybe more importantly, we're concerned that this is going to impact surface property rights. We can see them, as they've defined tributaries, basically going up to a stock water pond out on the public lands that maybe overflows and creates an impact on a dry gully that flows into a water of the United States, and they're open for $37,500 a day fine. So it's something we're very concerned about. We think it needs to be stopped, and the Supreme Court needs to look at this as where their authority lies. That's one of those issues. But when you look at water in general, 70% of Utah's water originates on forest system lands. And the forest system, the Forest Service, as well as the BLM, have exercised some dramatic, far-reaching regulatory schemes that is collecting de facto water, which is very troubling to us, Chad.
Well, let me ask a question, because I have heard from 2 or 3 sources as I travel around the state through the years that some of the federal agencies, one of the federal agencies in particular, threatened to not renew grazing allocations unless they were co-named on the water rights, and that this has happened on a couple of occasions, saying that they actually had prior use because they represent the animals that live in the forest. Now that sounds like a really far-fetched story to me. That, you know, that sounds like instead of an urban legend, a rural legend. Is there any truth to any of that?
That's legitimate. That has, I've been in meetings where farmers have told me and ranchers have told me that is a condition of their turnout to their permit, that they were required to hold the water in joint ownership with the United States. The U.S. Forest Service actually has what they call the water clause, and the water clause says 2 things. One, if you have a permitted activity on forest system lands, you will hold your water jointly with the United States. That's a ski resort, that's a grazing rancher. The second part of that is if you no longer have that right to graze, whether it's access or cut AUMs or whatever it is, that your water right reverts to the United States. That's very troubling. That to me is a violation of the U.S. Constitution and the Utah Constitution that guarantees due process and just compensation for a government taking. So we're very concerned about that. In fact, I've been involved in an effort in Washington, D.C. with Scott Tipton, congressman from Colorado, and John Barrasso, a senator from Wyoming, in what's called the Water Rights Protection Act. It's passed the House of Representatives. It's now in the United States Senate, and it would preclude the BLM, the Forest Service, or agencies of the Interior Department or U.S. Department of Agriculture to hold those water rights. So we believe that this is the protection that our people out across the landscape need.
Chad, one of the take-home messages here is one of the foundational building blocks to a sustainable farm or ranch, whether it be in Utah or across the country, is certainty. A farmer or rancher has got to have some level of certainty to operate. There's enough risks in this industry as it is. And with the Forest Service and the BLM and other competing forces out there, upends the certainty. Whether you're a rancher that operates privately on private land or on public lands, we have got to maintain some level of certainty. And these issues we're talking about now turns that all upside down.
We see grazing and animal production pushed off of public lands, that we're creating a scenario where the country's going to starve to death. Now, I'm a layman. I don't know if there are other places for them to get it, but that's, I mean, in the back of my mind, that's a troubling concern.
The argument is that what comes off the public lands from sheep and cattle is not that significant. Well, in the big picture, pounds of meat, maybe it's not a tremendous part of it, but it's important because it's where a lot of the calves that go into feedlots in the Midwest come from cow-calf operations here in Utah. It's a part of our culture, it's a part of our heritage, and it's a big part of the economics of rural Utah. And Chad, it's troubling to me as I look at the numbers going back to 1949, between the Forest Service and the BLM, they've cut 74% of the grazing rights away from family ranches that have been doing this for 100, 125 years. They've taken away 3/4 of their ability to graze and have certainty and to have a business operation that continues to contribute to rural economies. We've seen in that period of time 58% of the family ranches go out of business. It's because of cuts, it's because of uncertainty, it's because of an overbearing government.
what do you do about it?
You know, it's troubling because right now a philosophy out of Washington, D.C. is that these land management agencies are the power. Well, the history and the knowledge base is the farmers and the ranchers that have been out there and understand the resource. So there needs to be better combination, better collaboration, if you will, for the benefit and the best interest of the resource. These ranchers have been out there for 100 years, 125 years. They know how to graze. They know how to make it sustainable. If you look back at when we were at the peak in sheep and cattle production on the public lands, you know what? Mule deer was at an all-time peak. Sage grouse was at an all-time peak. And guess what? We weren't seeing catastrophic wildfires that are just inundating the air and the water supply with soot and ash. That's a product of not allowing these resources, whether it's forest lands, whether it's grazing lands, to be used like they should be in a multiple use fashion.
So your recommendations go, I mean, we've got people in a letter writing mode right now, okay? So if we've got them all whipped up, what should they be writing to Congress about? Anything else?
There are legislative proposals at the state level and the national level that are set in motion to address this. Congressman Bishop and Congressman Chaffetz both have legislative agendas to help the state of Utah gain greater control. Quite honestly, the one that's probably up front and center is Representative Ken Ivory's transfer of federal land to the state. That would give greater control to the state, the people that know it the best, and to work with the counties and the landowners to do a better job with these resources. I don't think there's anybody out there, Chad, that can argue under management by lawsuit and inside of the Beltway in Washington, D.C., that these lands are being managed in a proper way. If the forage is not going harvested, we've got wildfires. You've seen the dead and dying timber out there on the forest lands across the state. That's mismanagement. All of these play into the reason this ought to come to local control, and that we have the opportunity to be a full-blown state, just like the other states that control the lands within their borders.
Excellent. Well, we've got to take a break. We'll be right back with the county seat. When we come back, we'll kind of wrap things up as we approach the centennial of the Farm Bureau. We'll be right back.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
I let me be me. Oh, you know that I'm finally free. You know that let me be me. Oh, you know that I'm finally free to be me.
When you buy Utah made and grown.
I'm a Utah Zone vegetable grower. I care about the foods I produce.
Because when it comes to quality local foods, I understand the importance of Utah grown and raised.
The jobs that we enjoy are vital because Utah's Own supports our communities.
As a consumer, I look for Utah's Own products because Utah's Own is good for me and it's good for Utah.
Keep it here at home, Utah's Own.
Planning your next conference or corporate event? The Davis Conference Center offers 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting and exhibit space, plus high-tech audio-visual services that will make your event a success. Whether you're planning a training, meeting, company retreat, wedding, or large convention, let the staff at the Davis Conference Center help you arrange your next event. Located east of I-15 in Layton, call 801-416-8888 or visit davisconferencecenter.com today.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today with the members of the officers of the Farm Bureau Federation, the public policy guy. I do have a question for you, Sterling. What is on the horizon that people need to be paying attention to?
Certainly one of those is stream bed access. Utah legislature addressed that legislatively, 2010. The courts have taken it since then. That's on the horizon, and our membership, our communities certainly need to be aware of that today.
You know, adding to that, we've seen 2 court cases move through, and one of them has already been appealed to the Utah Supreme Court. The other one is probably in the process. And what's concerning to us is this, again, is an attack on certainty of title. These stream beds for 100 years have been in the ownership of the property owners, whether that's in cities, along City Creek and residences, or out on farms and ranches. And you know, the U.S. Supreme Court said in the Leo Sheep Company that there is a special need for certainty for those properties along stream beds. In fact, it goes on and says land titles need to be predictable, and that they are unwilling to upset settled expectations. Well, these 2 district courts in Utah, they upset expected expectations by those property owners, and we expect the Supreme Court to take a look at this, Chad.
Okay. Now, for my curiosity, I have one question. Why is this not the Utah Farm Bureau Association? Everybody else has an association. You guys have a federation. What's the difference?
Chad, the root word to federation is federate. And in Utah, we have 28 county farm bureaus that federate to form the Utah Farm Bureau. Utah Farm Bureau now for 99 years, and along with all the other states and Puerto Rico, federate to form the American Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau is essentially an old, sturdy, proven farmhouse for Farm Bureau members to come, gather, congregate, counsel with one another to express their views and opinions.
So to help put this into picture, the driving policy and issues that Farm Bureau undertakes starts in the local county levels at the federation, and then they bring it upwards as opposed to
you're describing our strength. Yep. That is where our muscle is at the local county level.
Well, I do want to take the time to congratulate you with 100 years of Farm Bureau. We look forward to speaking with you again during the centennial and all the celebrations, the tractor pulls and everything. You know, I'm sure they're all going to be out there this year.
We're looking forward to a great year.
All right, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Thank you for taking the time to invite us into your home. We'll look for you next week on the County Seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4